In fiscal year 2022, the wage and hour division recovered more than $3.9 million for 4,600 people just employed in guard services.
Every week, bosses are breaking the law, but you don't hear about it on your local news. Instead, you see some poor or working class person's mugshot because of petty theft, trespassing, whatever the case may be. But you're not going to see a CEO's mugshot, and despite the fact that they actually steal more than the rest of us, and they are responsible for the deaths of almost as many people as are murdered. I mean, bosses are just really going wild, and they don't face the same consequences for them. So obviously this is not going to make up for it, but we're going to call it out here on the Valley Labor Report. We're going to start with Tennessee, where the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals has upheld a lower court's ruling that a Memphis Starbucks violated the National Labor Relations Act when it fired 7 workers over union organizing efforts. The NLRA gives workers the right to form a union and collectively bargain and forbids employers from interfering. Specifically, employers are prohibited from retaliating against workers who organize or support union efforts, and that includes by creating new rules or by enforcing old rules inconsistently, which is what happened here after the Memphis 7 were fired for behavior that was not previously punished after they began publicly supporting the union drive. The August 8th ruling affirmed that the terminations also had a chilling effect on organizing efforts not only in Memphis, but in Starbucks outlets across the U.S., and agreed with a district court, with a Trump-appointed district court judge, by the way, that the workers known as the Memphis 7 should have been reinstated to their jobs, and it is right that they were reinstated. So very good news from the Tennessee Lookout. In Mississippi, the U.S. Department of Labor's Wage and Hour Division last week recovered $314,211 in back wages and liquidated damages after a Mississippi staffing agency, Prime Care Nursing, stole the money from the paychecks of 91 nurses and other employees by paying them straight time instead of the legally required overtime rates after 40 hours, including for some nurses who worked as many as 84 hours.
Just totally criminal.
This was a violation of the Fair Labor Standards Act, which sets overtime pay at time and a half the standard rate after 40 hours. Located in Jackson and Greenville, Mississippi, Prime Care Nursing provides nursing care staffing throughout Mississippi, serving hospitals, nursing homes, patients in their homes, hospice agencies, and rehabilitation centers. Prime Care Nursing workers include registered nurses, licensed practical nurses, and caregivers. After the investigation and the recovery of the stolen wages, Prime Care Nursing will begin paying employees what they are owed under the law. Very, very important thing there. The U.S. Department of Labor notes that enforcement in this sector is particularly important because as the aging U.S. population grows and demand for healthcare increases, employment in a variety of healthcare occupations is projected to grow 13% from 2021 to 2031, faster than the average for all occupations, adding about 2 million jobs. Wage and Hour Division District Director Audrey Hall in Jackson, Mississippi, said when employers violate workers' rights, they make it harder for them to provide for themselves and their families. The Department of Labor will hold employers accountable when they mistakenly think they can violate these rights. Staying in Mississippi, federal workplace safety investigators have determined after an investigation that one of the nation's leading cement manufacturers, Buzzy Unisem USA, which operates as River Cement Sales Company, could have prevented a 50-year-old employee from drowning after falling from a barge into the Mississippi River in February of 2023. The U.S. Department of Labor's Occupational Safety and Health Administration looked into the fatal incident and found that 3 employees boarded a barge without wearing personal flotation devices. Shortly after climbing to a second deck to repair a blocked valve, one of the workers fell headfirst into the river from the barge's side. Co-workers tried unsuccessfully to rescue their colleague, and the remains were not recovered until nearly a month later. OSHA's inspectors identified identified 5 serious violations by the Bethlehem, Pennsylvania-based company. Specifically, the agency found that the company failed to make sure employees wore personal flotation devices when exposed to drowning hazards. The company did not install guardrails to protect workers from falling into the water. They did not train employees in first aid, and they found that an eye wash station was not installed for workers exposed to corrosive materials. The company faces $62,500 in proposed penalties and has 15 business days from the receipt of the citations to comply, request a conference with OSHA, or contest the findings.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
Heading down a little further south to Louisiana, in 2021, the U.S. Department of Labor filed a lawsuit after Sentinel Security Group, a company employing security guards, refused to comply with the findings of the department's Wage and Hour Division. Investigators determined that Sentinel Security Group denied overtime to affected employees by not combining hours employees worked at more than one location, which is obviously still a violation of the Fair Labor Standards Act. Last week, the Department of Labor announced that in May of 2023, years after this allegation was made, the U.S. Department of Labor obtained a consent judgment in U.S. District Court ordering Sentinel Security Group to pay $23,841 in back wages and an equal amount in liquidated damages to the affected employees. The department also filed a separate action in administrative court and obtained consent findings that require the company to pay $7,317 in civil money penalties for Sentinel's repeat violations. Here's something to help you grasp how big of a problem wage theft is. In fiscal year 2022, the Wage and Hour Division recovered more than $3.9 million for 4,600 people just employed in guard services.
Wow.
After over 600 investigations. So when the Republicans are talking about wanting to cut the Department of Labor's budget by 30%, this is the stuff that they're wanting to cut, right? 600 investigations. That's not free. They're wanting to let bosses get away with stealing from you and me and putting us in harm's way. Anyway.
Right. How many more of those people would have been left out to dry?
Exactly. Over in Arkansas, a federal workplace safety investigation determined that a 39-year-old employee of a South Arkansas timberland and sawmill facility, Anthony Timberlands Incorporated, suffered fatal injuries from an automated lumber stacking machine at its Bearden location. Inspectors with the U.S. Department of Labor's Occupational Safety and Health Administration found that the employee was cleaning around and beneath the machine in February of 2023 when its hoist table fell on them. Inspectors learned that the company had the lumber stacking system installed in July of 2022 without any barrier devices to prevent employees from entering the area beneath the stacker hoist. OSHA issued citations to the company for 4 serious violations, including failing to provide lockout-tagout procedures to prevent a machine from starting and moving during maintenance. They did not ensure that guards were in place beneath the stacking systems. They failed to provide barriers to stop employees from entering the danger zone, and they did not make sure to have signage in place to warn employees about crushing hazards. The agency proposed $218,759 in penalties for the violation. The relatively high penalty is because this isn't the first time that the company has negligently endangered employees, or even the first time that the company's negligence has killed a person. OSHA Area Director Kia McCullough in Little Rock, Arkansas, said this company's continued disregard for the safety and well-being of its employees is inexcusable and must stop. Ensuring workers' safety is not optional, it's the law. In August of 2022, OSHA cited the company after an employee at its Malvern facility suffered fatal injuries when an unguarded sharp chain activated. The agency also cited the employer in January of 2020 when an employee in a Bearden facility suffered a thumb amputation when their finger made contact with an unguarded chipper feeder. The company has 15 days from the receipt of the citation to comply, request an informal conference, or contest the findings. Dishonorable mentions: the EEOC alleges that Supreme, a staffing agency GNC, and Barrett, one of Supreme's clients, retaliated against a former account supervisor when the companies removed the employee from the work site after the employee complained about the company's treatment of Hispanic persons. The EEOC further alleges that Barrett and Supreme further retaliated against the employee when they fired him less than 2 months later. I forgot to include where that happened. Wasn't that Mississippi? I think it was Mississippi. More Perfect Union uncovered an illegal scheme by Starbucks to rid itself of unionized locations. It is against the law for employers to assist or encourage decertification attempts of a union, and yet that is exactly what More Perfect Union has uncovered that Starbucks is doing across the country, with managers talking about the process and dozens of flyers with information about decertification and contact information for the National Right to Work Foundation laying around where employees can see them unprompted. 5 Norfolk Southern train cars left the railway near Battelle in the northern part of DeKalb County, Alabama, near the Georgia state line. There are no hazardous materials reported, nor injuries or current threat to life. In 2018, state and local governments in Alabama agreed to pay Shipt at least $19 million in combined cash incentives and tax breaks if it met its goals of hiring hundreds of corporate workers and investing in its local presence. The company has failed to meet its hiring goals and it is unclear if they have met the promised $10 million investment in Birmingham. In response, the government says they will give the company no more incentives, with the city, Jefferson County, and the state's Workforce Development Agency having only paid a measly $3 million to Shipt so far for their unfulfilled promises.
Adam and Jacob, it's Infinite. How are y'all?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Oh, just to expand on what you were saying, I think that maybe if we, change some of these these civil charges to criminal charges and are allowed to hit corporations with RICO violations, then that could help. But also, maybe if we just move the fines like 2 to the left, 2 to the right, decimal places to the right, so that, oh no, you're not getting a $200,000 fine. You're getting a $2 million fine, a $20 million fine.
Right.
I believe that would also help. Just my thoughts on that. But there is a story this week in Northern Labor that I wanted to share with you.
Yeah.
27 of the 31 Boston markets in New Jersey are shut down because of wage theft.
Wow.
Now, the company got hit with $2.6 million in fines and have to pay back $600,000 to, I think, about 300 or so workers. So that story I found rather fascinating.
Yeah.
Want to share that with you?
That's pretty wild that they would actually be shut down.
And who eats at Boston Market anyway?
Yeah, exactly. I didn't even know those were still around, frankly, but wow.
State labor officials have shut down. It's not like, we don't have enough money to pay anymore, and so we're shutting down. The state labor officials, that is incredibly based.
Yeah, as we mentioned earlier, we wouldn't know what that's like here in Alabama. Right. We don't have state labor officials, at least not in reality.
I was at an event where Secretary of Labor Marty Walsh came to Birmingham and was talking about the Infrastructure Act with a bunch of union members, and the chair of the Department of Labor for Alabama was there, and he had the nerve to be walking around giving out business cards at a union event without a bug on it. Can you believe that?
I can.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't even want to get into that. Oh, but then there was a story I really read coming out of Dallas News about 3 million people in Texas are getting paid less than $7.25 an hour.
Wow.
Wow.
Yes, I'm like, wait a second, 3 million. That's like more than some states' entire populations.
Yeah.
Seriously.
But I mean, I don't know how that's not more of a scandal, because I mean, that's just criminal. And this is why I say that the fines need to be increased and penalties need to be increased. So that at this point, you're just flagrantly violating laws. So it needs to be some criminal penalties so that they get so that they just have to get like basically fined into non-existence.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I mean, that's Biden floated that at a Teamsters convention last year, criminal penalties for election interference in a union election. But, of course, that, you know, never went anywhere.
But I totally agree with you, Infinite. I mean, there has to be real consequences. Slaps on the wrist are not real consequences. And Starbucks is a good example of that. They have recognized that they would rather eat the penalties than do the right thing. And we have to change that calculation.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
from the Longview News Journal in Texas, an academic study has revealed a troubling trend. 3 million Texas workers paid less than a minimum wage and $99 million in judgments from the Texas Workforce Commission that are essentially being ignored by employers.
Oh, my God. Wow.
Wow.
Time to see some assets. I think if you start seeing some bank accounts of some of these people, then I think that would, like, I'm just one of those, when I messed up as a kid, the first time I messed up doing something, I get punished by my mom. If I messed up doing the same exact thing, the punishment's going to be way more severe. So, I mean, maybe we should just go ahead and follow some of my mom's rules. Just a thought. I'll let y'all talk about it off the air. Talk to you next week.
All right, man.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for watching. Appreciate it.
Right.
Yeah, appreciate that. Did not know about the Texas story. That is definitely wild. Yeah, interested in learning more about that and what's going on there in Texas. That's,
sure enough.
That's 3 million people, 3 million families.
I mean, that number, so at first I thought that was like a, that the Department of Labor had found that, but that's an academic study saying that 3 million people are being underpaid. And so that's presumably like every employee that's being underpaid in Texas, and that doesn't surprise me. But the nearly $100 million in judgments from a government agency that's just being ignored, that's crazy. That's crazy. And, you know, I mean, that's
the disparity that we're speaking about, right? Because I mean, how many of us know folks that are having to pay fines and fees to the government to get their driver's license back, or to get off probation, or to deal with whatever kind of problems they've got with, you know, whatever agency it may be, right? And they can't just ignore these things, right? Working class person can't just like ignore their probation officer.
Right.
And get away with it.
Yeah.
You can't just ignore court orders and get away with it as everyday working people.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a big disparity, and so I think that's why it's important to, you know, shine a light on that.
Exactly.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.